trial. We're joined by civil rights attorney Adante Pointer. Adante, it's great to have you on. We always appreciate the time. Look, there were some people who thought that it potentially could take a couple weeks to seat a jury in this case and find people who would be willing to be impartial in the case. Are you surprised at how quickly we have seen 12 jurors seated here?
It is a bit surprising. You know, this is a case that has high visibility. Obviously, it includes the former president, and he has a lightning rod of a personality and reputation. So pretty surprising that the attorneys were able to weed out those people who expressed an open bias and a difficulty in remaining neutral and being willing to listen to the evidence.
Well, you kind of said it there. I mean, the former president is very well known, and I feel like it may be difficult to find a jury that is impartial. How do you go about making sure that people can remain impartial in this trial?
Well, you know, the court is going to give any juror or their alternate a lot of rules that they have to abide by. Not doing any independent research, not discussing it with family, friends, or coworkers, or even other jurors, but that they must just listen to the evidence that's presented in court and kind of block out and ignore any other outside influences or information, which could be pretty tough. All of these jurors, essentially, even though they're not being sequestered, they have to do it on their own. So those are some of the things that the court will try to ensure takes place so that the former president gets a fair trial.
From the standpoint of being an attorney, you will obviously likely have some jurors who will say, when they're asked the question during voir dire, whether, you know, that they can be and they believe they can be fair and impartial. But obviously, as an attorney, you're trying to judge whether they are telling the truth. Are there things that you look for to get an idea about whether this person can, in fact, be a fair and impartial juror?
Certainly. You're always trying to read the tea leaves as an attorney. And one of the things that was done here is the prospective jurors were given a questionnaire asking them about all manner of things, be it different causes that they may have donated for, are they affiliated or members of different groups. You're trying to figure out if this person has any political leanings or ideological beliefs that might drive their decision versus the evidence that's brought into the trial. On top of that, when you're doing voir dire as an attorney, you're asking questions and you're trying to read body language, and you're really looking for people who are going to be upfront and straightforward with their beliefs. That way you can weed those people out that you don't want on the jury, and ultimately you're left with a jury that hopefully is a fair and impartial jury. But there's always people who try to sneak on the juries by hiding their beliefs, especially in a case like this where I would not be surprised if a jury issues a book or releases a book after sitting on this jury.
Okay, I want to talk about the makeup of the jury. Yeah, that wouldn't be surprising. But the makeup of the jury here, so we have a sales professional, an investment banker, software engineer, security engineer, an English teacher. I mean, we could go on here, but there's also multiple lawyers. Do you want lawyers on your jury?
Well, I'm a lawyer myself. I like to think that I would make a good juror. Frankly, both attorneys are going to be looking at who is going to be the leader, the foreperson of the jury, a person who will be an influencer, which is a popular term to be used nowadays. We use it with social media, but as a trial attorney, you're looking for an influencer in the jury box who's going to lead the rest of the juries the way towards the verdict that you're looking for.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Adante, about some of the developments today, because along with a seating, a 12-person jury and one alternate as well, 2 jurors were also dismissed for a couple of different reasons here. These were folks who had already been seated on the jury yesterday. And I'm curious to get your sense about whether you think we are going to see more jurors dismissed as this case continues to move forward, and how important those alternates are likely to be.
Well, if this case stretches out for, you know, any period of time, an extended period of time, then alternates will certainly come into play, because there's going to be a lot of pressure on this jury, a lot of people who will be looking at them with the microscope to see that they're not running afoul of the guidelines that the judge is going to give them around being impartial, being neutral, and not discussing it. And there'll be a lot of research into these people's past histories, like what happened with the 2 jurors that were dismissed today. So, you know, you're going to see, it's potentially that you could see a juror dismissed during trial and an alternate take their place, given the amount of scrutiny there is on these jurors.
Can you give us just your perspective? Is it common or rare to see what we saw with these 2 people dismissed? I mean, one of them said they had problems being impartial. The other said that they were concerned about the answers that they gave and whether or not they were truthful. For them to actually, you know, speak up and say that, is that common or is it rare?
That's pretty rare that once a person is seated on the jury, that they then speak up and say, hey, despite you wanting me, despite me being selected, I'm going to now volunteer to tell you something that likely is going to get me bounced. So that does not happen frequently. However, given the high stakes of this trial and the amount of scrutiny, I imagine these jurors either don't want to have to live under the microscope, or they're thinking to themselves, this stuff is going to come out at some point in time. I better just offer it up now before I turn into a scapegoat.
Finally, Adante, before we let you go here, sort of moving away from the question of seating this jury here, I understand that after they find alternates, which the judge is hoping to finish that process tomorrow, they may do something called a Sandoval hearing, which is where they're going to sort of discuss the scope of the questions that former President Trump could be asked if he were to take the stand in this case. Just sort of looking ahead here, I'm curious, how likely do you think it is that we see former President Trump take the stand at this trial?
Well, the decision on whether or not a defendant takes a stand is a critical one that the defendant and their attorneys discuss ad nauseum and prepare for. Given the president's personality, I suspect that he will take the stand because he thinks that he can explain away what's going on here, which, of course, from his perspective is a political witch hunt, and this is a politically motivated prosecution. So I would not be surprised. And frankly, we've seen he rarely misses or passes by a moment where he can get in front of the cameras and the mic, which is exactly what he would have here, with a captive audience to explain his position and his argument. So I expect that he takes it, even though the average attorney would tell the defendant, you don't need to, nor should you.
Yeah, they certainly would. All right, we appreciate the perspective. Adante Pointer, civil rights attorney here in the Bay Area. Good to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Sure.